Let's grade the Indiana Pacers offseason. What have they done well? What haven't they done well? What does that mean for their future plans? Mat Issa is going to join us to break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name is Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today we are grading the Pacers offseason so far. All the moves they have made via the draft, via trades, via signings, grading them out of 10, except for one category that we graded out of 5 to make the final score out of 75. A good score. I've done this exercise in the past is like 50-ish. That's pretty good. That means most of your moves were, about as expected. A perfect 10 is getting a good player on a long-term deal or getting a player on a bargain contract. A 5 is that's average. That's fine. That's good for your long-term outlook. And a 0 is obviously this is terrible. This makes no sense. So Mat Issa is going to join us. He covers the NBA for a million places, has written great stories about Tyrese Halliburton and Reggie Miller in the past. He's written for SB Nation, Opta Analyst, Forbes, FanSided, all over the map. And he's going to join us to grade the Pacers offseason. Let's just hop right in and get to it. Summer League is done, and the NBA is going into hibernation unless one of those Harden Lillard guys gets traded. So let's grade what the Pacers have done so far in the summer, noting that this could be an incomplete grade. 8 topics to grade for a fun rounded score out of 75, everybody's favorite number for grades. And joining me to talk Pacers summer grading moves, first-time guest here, it's Mat Issa of, my God, okay, let me make sure I got all this. SB Nation, Opta, Forbes, and FanSided. He did the whole summer of the quest trying to find the best players in the NBA. Matt, did I get everything? What did I miss?
Yeah, everything that matters. Main part is we need to change first time on the Locked On Pacers because I love this podcast. I love the work you do, Tony. So I'm excited to hand out some grades, play school in the summertime.
I haven't ever really been like grades in terms of letter grades. I feel like I'm just like making it up when it's like, oh, it could be a B+ or an A-. Like I feel like numerical grades are just better. Everybody knows what a number is, and we all have different strictnesses of teachers. So that is why I prefer that. And I am also excited to hand out grades because I have different thoughts on these now than I thought I did. And I want to start with their lottery pick, Jarace Walker. And part of assessing this pick to me is not just that they picked Jarace Walker. It's that they traded from the 7th pick to the 8th pick. How thrilling. And picked up those future second rounders from the Wizards and Suns to get their guy. What did you like about that pick? What grade would you give that entire string of transactions for the Pacers?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to be completely transparent with the audience here. I'm not a draft guy. I very rarely watch college basketball. I'm so consumed with the NBA history that I don't learn a lot about these guys until they start wearing NBA uniforms. With that said, this year I have made more of an effort to watch more college basketball. I actually scouted pretty thoroughly a couple of guys in this year's class, and I'm hoping to use some of this offseason to learn more about some of these upcoming guys. Now, what I do know about Jarace Walker, the theory of him in terms of he's this futuristic 4, kind of like an Aaron Gordon type player with some passing chops, the versatile defense, kind of like in theory, the perfect guy to pair with Miles Turner. So just to pick himself, I really like that. I have some people that I really trust who actually had him like 5th or 6th on their board. So for them to get him that far down is another plus. And then you're recouping assets on top of that. And basically all you did is swap a guy who, and I'm a little bit biased against like the project players, you know what I mean? The guys who are just like super raw, they're super tantalizing, super sexy, but like their floor is really low. It's kind of like my theory. I don't know. I wasn't that high on Shaedon Sharp after I watched him. I hope he has a great career, but I wasn't that high on him compared to somebody like Benedict Mathurin because I didn't see as high as a floor. So the fact that they got a higher floor prospect for a raw pick, got some assets, got a guy who in theory is supposed to fit in well with what they have. That was a lot of rambling. We're doing out of 10 for this one, right?
Yes.
I'll go, am I allowed to give 0.5s? Like,
Yeah, that's fine. That's
okay.
fine.
Okay, I'll do 8.5 here.
8.5. Very nice. Okay. That is similar thinking to me. So I feel like part of this exercise too also has to be, well, what I have done, right? Because
Mhm.
if not, I'm grading on a rubric of just like what they did versus nothing. When I ranked 32 players because at the time I did that, the Pacers had 4 picks in the top 32. They traded out of that and ended up only having 2 picks in the top 32, but I still ranked 32 players. And when I did so, Jarris Walker was 7th, which was the Pacers' original pick for me. My top 6 were Wemby, Scoot, Amen, Anthony Black, Brandon Miller, Oscar Thompson. And hey, all of those guys were gone when the Pacers were up at 7. So I thought, okay, if they pick Jarris Walker, that's the best player I have left. I think he's a great fit and a better fit than potentially some of those 6 guys above him that I actually ranked. And so he would be a great pick. I had Taylor Hendricks 8. That would have been a fine pick too. And then they traded back from 7 to 8 and got potentially a fantastic second because the Phoenix Suns implosion potential is the highest, maybe the second highest in the league. I don't know how anybody feels about Dallas right now. And a Wizards pick that, look, I grew up a Wizards fan. That could be amazing depending on what their next era looks like. So good value because you're also getting an 8th pick, obviously. And then they get Jarris Walker anyway, who by their own accounts is the player they would have picked regardless. So to get my 7th ranked prospect at 8, to get 2 assets added to your pool for free, basically, because you were going to pick the guy anyway. And I had Bilal at 16th on my board. So no harm, no foul, and letting him go 1 pick above you. That's great work, right? That is getting stuff out of basically nothing, ringing the towel. The thing we don't know, man, and I always have to say this with front office moves, is I have no idea what trade offers the Pacers had for the 7th pick or what like agreed to prices for other awesome players were out there that involved the 7th pick. And without knowing those, it's impossible to be like they did the absolute best thing possible, especially because they've discussed that, yeah, there was, chatter about going after an established starter or, just getting really good fitting players on our timeline, but the price was too high or the contract length of the player was too short. Like they've said that on the record. So we know there was some exploring there. And without knowing those, I can't grade it perfectly because you don't know what decisions they didn't make. But with the info I have, I think they did extremely well here. And Jarris, of course, had a fantastic summer league. I think that there were some avenues that would have. So I put 9 or 10 to be clear for my grade because I don't know what they didn't do. I can't. It's like is it fair to say that they don't get a 10 because of that? Is that stupid? But I think that given the way I rank the players, getting extra assets out of it and getting the guy that I think was the best player available and the best fit left is a 10. And then I put 9 or 10 because I was like, well, what if they didn't do something I would have thought would be better? But I feel like that's not fair because I don't know what those things are. So I kind of have to put 10. So I'm going to hedge and do what you just did with a half and put 9.5 just for that reason, even though I have no idea what they could have done because it'll never get out what like specifically they offered or could have offered for doing something else.
Yeah, I mean, I also kind of wrongfully penalized them, you could say, for my own ignorance, and that was in the fact that I just don't know if like part of the thing with draft picks is like you just don't know if
Yeah, right.
Jarris Walker is going to be a good basketball player. So
Right.
like I could talk about the theoretical thing all day. So that's why I kind of had it at 8.5. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, and I think you made a lot of good points. It's almost like you cover this team for a living.
What do you think? Like, how would you assess grading when they didn't do something, but they talked about it as an option? Like so I always assume that people like this happens a lot. Like a team will trade a player for any team, not even just the Pacers,
Mhm.
for a value that's perceived like less than the public sphere, and people will go, "That's all they got. What are they thinking?" Blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't think the front office is intentionally taking a worse offer. Like, I think that the perception was just wrong in the public. So like without knowing what offers are out there or what a team is working with, it's so hard to do these kind of grades and stuff like that. So maybe what I just said is totally unfair and I can only judge them on what they did because none of the offers or specific parameters will ever be in the public sphere, but it feels like it has to be part of the discussion, especially like I didn't feel this way. I felt like the Pacers should be thinking long term this summer, but some fans were like, now's the time to go for it, trade the 7th pick, like let playoffs are it's time. So, I kind of feel like if that's how you felt, you could consider the things I just said of what they didn't do more strongly. But to me, since they chose the direction I would have taken if I was running the team, I think that I can't penalize them as much for that, if that makes sense. Hey guys, short little break here so I can talk to you about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets even if you win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over under to who you think is going to get the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball.
No, I get that 100%. I think in general, people have this wrongful perception of front office, like executives, is just like a bunch of bumbling idiots. They think, and it's like it always happens like that, right when the trade happens. I mean, you saw it firsthand when the Pacers Kings deal happened a year and a half ago or whatever it was. Everyone's kind of laughing at the Kings, like, oh, ha, 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 the Kings did this again. The Kings struck again, with the stupidity.
Kangs. That's what everybody
Yeah,
said, right?
yeah, exactly. And like, I know you're very happy about how the trade worked out, but the Kings fans are too. I mean, it was a win-win. You know what I mean? So, I think we got to watch out, like getting caught up in the moment. Understand that these people probably thought about this for a while when they make these decisions, and then they have some sort of reasoning behind them. It's okay to disagree with that reasoning, but they do definitely have a reasoning behind it. And I'm kind of with you. I don't know, as like an outsider looking in, I know it's hard. Like if you're a fan of the team, you see that you have this guy who's like a top 20 player in the league already, kind of running the show. You're like, why don't we try to win right now, maximize that. But like, I mean, if you guys want to change the history of mediocrity, you can't just do like a 1 year little retool and get back into that. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna take a little bit of time. So I like that in terms of the direction. I do like the fact that they kept the pick, went with a guy like that with that kind of theoretical upside.
And we'll talk about him because they did something significant with him this summer too. Let's go to their second first-round pick, which this one's a little trickier for many reasons. One, because I watched Ben Shepherd at the Combine, where he was like one of the best players who actually scrimmaged. So, of course, my perception of him was like, oh, this guy's great. I knew very little of him at Belmont outside of Zach Milner, who has a database for draft picks taking NBA threes. Ben Shepherd was, I believe, 5th in three-point percentage among all prospects in NBA range threes, but his defense was not considered a strong suit, all this stuff. So I didn't know a ton about him, but I knew enough to make somewhat of an informed opinion. And I had seen one full Belmont game, to be clear, prior to the draft. So I had Ben Shepherd ranked in my top 32, which is great because that makes this easier to talk about. I am 22nd, actually. So from a value perspective, I would say, yes, good pick. They picked the player that I thought was the 22nd best player in this draft with the 26th pick. However, unlike with Jarris, where all the players above him were already picked, that was not the case for me in this draft. I ranked players way differently than everybody else. My 10th best player, G.G. Jackson, was still available at 26th. My 14th best player, Colby Jones, was still available at 26. My 15th best player, Leonard Miller, was still available at 26. My 19th best player, Bryce Sensabaugh, was still available at 26. So I am inclined to personally ding them for what I would have done. What I would have done is pick G.G. Jackson or Colby Jones, but they still picked a player that I think is good and got positive value there. And I get picking a shooter at any pick in the draft. So it's, again, it almost feels unfair to ding them for what I would have done, but that's the point of this exercise, right? So I give this a 7. I think Ben Shepherd's good. The reason also that I dinged them a little bit here is they have a ton of these guard wing types on their team already with Nembhard and Mathurin and Neesmith and Hield. Nembhard might just play backup 1, but it's not immediately clear what Shepherd's path to minutes is ever. It will come. NBA teams change like crazy. Like since 2018, the only Pacer left is Miles Turner. Like in 5 years, they will have maybe 3 or 4 of the guys currently on their team still on the team. Like there will be a path for minutes for him, but I don't know what that is right now. I don't expect him to play year one. 26 picks don't play in year one a lot. But either way, like a lot of those wing guard types, especially Mather and Neesmith, are going to be presumably on the team for a while. So I give this a 7, but that is the highest I can go.
Yeah. Okay. So now this is where I really need to be transparent.
That's
I
fine.
where I know about know a good bit about Jarris Walker. I don't know that much about Ben Shepherd as a player. I looked into him a little bit. He does okay. I'll say this again without watching really much of any of him. He does kind of remind me of Nemhard in that he's like an older guy, and he kind of rose up boards a little bit late in the process. And I mean, if the Pacers, like, obviously they only have one example of really hitting on these older guys in recent memory. I guess you'd call Duarte. I don't know if you'd call him a hit, but
We will
uh,
talk about him. Don't you
yeah,
worry.
yeah. But so for that, I think they deserve points. I did okay. So I do know a solid deal about Bryce Sensabaugh. I really like him,
Yeah.
especially at that spot. The fact that they didn't go with him, I got to ding them a little bit for that. So knowing all of that, again, knowing the projected value of 26th overall picks, how not often they tend to hit, I'll go like 6.
Yeah, that's another thing too, is like if Ben Shepherd is a failure of a pick, it's a 26 pick. Like that happens
Mhm.
a lot. That happens like probably I'd have to do exact numbers. I'm sure there's a many data study out there. Like that probably happens 60% of the time, right? Like it's just how the NBA is. So that would not be surprising at all. But yeah, I mean, when I ranked him, I thought this was a good pick. Also, you want an inside look behind the curtain, listeners? My notes page where I put all the transactions we're talking about, I did not type draft Shepherd. I put drat. So if you were not a fan of the Ben Shepherd pick, it projected onto my Google Docs page doing the notes for this. I think he's good. His summer league was really interesting because he had 3 awesome halves where it's like the vision is very clear for what his upside is, and a couple just like where is Ben Shepherd kind of invisible moments. So tough to have anything added from that, unlike Jarris, where in summer league you're like, oh, okay, I immediately get that this guy is going to be active and impactful. But I think for me, I mean, out of 20, getting a 16 and a half in the first round is pretty good. So good start. Okay, here is where you just said you have a blind spot to the draft. Do you have any opinion of their second round? They picked Mojave King from the New Zealand Breakers at 47, and they picked Isaiah Wong from Miami at 55. He's on a two-way deal. King's playing not for the Pacers this year. He's going to be a draft and stash. And then they picked up Oscar Tshiebwe, the rebounder, as an undrafted free agent on a two-way deal. Do you have any opinion of any of that? It is
Can't
okay to
say
not.
can't say I do. Cannot say I do. I mean I know who Sheboy is. Michigan State beat him. I was very happy about that. For the listeners, I go to Michigan State University. So other than that,
You can't
no.
be saying that on a podcast where a lot of listeners are fans of different Big Ten schools. That's a risky game.
I mean, none of them are. I doubt. Well, maybe now you guys are fans of Oscar Tshiebwe, but before that,
That's true. That's true. So for me, okay. So to get the pick to get King, they sent 32 to Denver and got 40 in that trade. And then they traded 40 to the Lakers and got an absolute ton of cash. I usually think cash trades suck. For fans, they got so much that I think it offered them some mobility in the second round. They didn't end up doing that. But they traded back twice. So here's what I think. I'm going to be saying some random off the cuff thoughts before I actually get to grading this. So they had too many picks for their roster spots, right? They were at 13 guys after picking Walker and Shepherd. They're actually at 14 guys. Like they only had one roster spot left. And so presumably anyone they picked would have gotten a two-way. They also had Kendall Brown waiting in the wings, who could have been a two-way candidate. I still think he is a candidate, even though he hasn't signed anything yet. They also had the 55th pick, which could have been a two-way guy, and who knows what kind of conversations they'd already had with Sheway. But they had a crunch of two ways too. So lots to consider with roster spots. And so if you can't get good value trading the picks away, then you kind of have to do a stash at some point. So it makes sense that with one of the picks, they're going to pick the stash guy. And if they liked Mojave King and didn't think he'd be there at 55, I understand why they picked him at 47. I have only watched Isaiah Wong play basketball once in my life before they picked him, and that was because he destroyed the Hoosiers in the NCAA tournament in the second round this season. So, um, a negative perception in some ways, a positive in another, in that he played well enough in that game. So their second round is interesting to me because I think for fans specifically, cash trades stink. But if they thought they had flexibility to do more, that's great. They just didn't. And I get that they had to stash someone, so it's unfair to ding them for picking someone who won't be on their team this year. It's just in total that their value this year from those is probably a little lower, even though having the stash player to trade is important, and Awong could turn out to be something. He had a really great close to summer league, 24 points in their last game. Shibwe can rebound like crazy and kind of struggles with a lot of defensive stuff. We'll see what he ends up being. So I I think that trading back made sense because the first round pick they got in that string of transaction from Denver could be much better, like 20-ish, depending on how good the Clippers are next year. So I think because you have to include that in part of the trades is the first round pick they got, I would give their second round like a 7, especially because a lot of the stuff they did, they had to do with the stashing and the two-way dancing. But at the same time, I think they tried to be more creative and then they weren't able to, which is kind of confusing to say. Like, it was clear to me that with the way they danced this around that they had plans of being a little more creative than they ultimately were, but they still tried, and I think that matters.
Yeah, okay. So I think for the sake of this exercise, I'm just going to default to you here. And now we can finally transition to the things that I actually know about. People are listening, like, why is this guy even on? Like, he's not funny.
We'll get
He
to the
doesn't,
NBA
his,
part, guys.
he doesn't,
I should have done the NBA guys first. I apologize.
okay. Should have built some confidence up. At least I could have made some stuff up here at this point.
Well, I'll let you give the same grade as me, and then we can move to the actual NBA players. Except I didn't acquire a new NBA player with the first offseason thing I want to talk about. And that's because this is the only thing I'm giving a perfect 10, Matt. Giving Tyrese Halliburton 5 years, $260 million. Don't care about the price number at all. They got 5 years with no player option extension for Tyrese Halliburton. That means they have a 23-year-old all-star point guard who's the only player ever to average 20 and 10 and shoot 40% from three on their team for at least 6 years, with no way for it to be shorter than that, which means also he'll be in the league for 7 years after 4 more seasons, which means there's 3 chances for him to make an All-NBA team and be eligible for the next Supermax extension, which would not be possible on any other team if he's traded. And so because there's no player option, the chance he stays even longer with the Pacers has gone up. And also, he's really good at basketball, and he's on the team for over a half decade. Knock on wood, if things go well for the Pacers in the coming years. I mean, I said leading up to free agency that they could bomb their signings. They could have terrible trades. They could have a mediocre draft. If they do this, they have a good offseason, and they did it. I mean, I kind of want to give them an 11 just for the fun of the exercise, but that's a perfect 10. I mean, I have nothing else to say about that. That's exactly, even if it means you have to give them the trade kicker and you have to give them the easiest possible escalators to get $260 million, that's a perfect 10 to me. They got the most important thing done.
Yeah. No, I mean, so I don't know how familiar you are with Michigan and like Michigan culture, but there's nothing like a Michigan summer, they say, right? So, 4th of July, right around the time he was signing that extension, I was driving up north with my buddy. My buddy, he's a casual NBA fan. He knows obviously it plays a big role in my life, and he goes like, "Hey, man, like what the hell's going on? Like Tyrese Halliburton just signed for all this money." And I turned to him and I'm like, "Do you know how good Tyrese Halliburton is at basketball?" Um, it's just like, I don't know, when I think about it, like, say, like, Tyrese Halliburton has, like, an off shooting year, or he has a season where he's just not shooting the ball the way he usually does. It happens to everyone, okay? Like, think about all the other ways he can contribute to a basketball game
Right.
with the passing, with the way he can play with pace, the way he can attack and drive and play off ball. He's a big body. It's not like you're gonna Trae Young him and put him through, like, 3 screens and make him fall apart. All the defensive playmaking he can do. So, like, even if, like, worst case scenario, the guy shoots like 34% one season from three, just because it's just for some reason, variance, like there's just still so many ways he can impact a basketball game. Um, yeah, I don't know how in the world Indiana is going to acquire a player this good unless they hit in the draft. Like, it's a no brainer, 10 out of 10. He's worth every penny. It seems like he wants to be there. Yeah, with you. 10 out of 10, perfect. Doesn't get any better than this. If I could have offered him more money, I would have.
If he's a down shooting year, but he's still a 20 and 10 plus guy, okay. So now his stats are Darius Garland stats or Trae Young stats. Like, that's still an awesome player. You wrote about Halliburton earlier this summer. I can't remember if it was late in the season or if it was in the summer, but
midway through the season, something
that's
like
what
that.
I thought. Yeah, that's right. That's right. What stood out to you about him at that time, especially as it applies to the Pacers and where they're heading?
Yeah. So, okay. Don't get mad at me, please. At the
Do I seem like somebody who gets mad?
I don't know. After what I'm gonna say, you might get mad at me.
Ooh,
At the end of the 2021-22 season, okay, I've always been really high on this guy. Always been really high on him. I'm still really high on him. I'm still holding all my stock, and I think he's gonna have an incredible year with the Wizards. But at the end of the 21-22 season, I didn't think there was that much of a difference between Jordan Poole and Tyrese Halliburton. Didn't think so. Okay. I mean, play styles obviously stylistically different, but like in terms of like impact ceiling wise, I'm like, oh no, pretty similar to me. I don't know why everyone's so excited about Tyrese
that was
Halliburton.
after Poole's best stretch of play ever, to your credit.
Yes. Yeah. And so the following season comes and I'm watching a couple of guys I respect are like saying Halliburton's name and then saying like Stephen Curry. And I'm like, excuse me. So I I go in my handy dandy little spreadsheets, my databases, I start looking, and Cerebral Sports has this global search tool they have that's like really good for like historical comparisons. And I looked up Halliburton's season this past year, and the only guys that it matched were guys. The worst player he matched was Baron Davis's All-Star season. Okay, that was the worst player. The other guys, Mark Price, Steve Nash, Chris Paul, James Harden, Stephen Curry, and I started watching him more, and I'm like, he's got a little bit of everything of all those guys. Like he's got Curry's movement. When he passes the ball, he doesn't just stand there. He's moving around. He cuts immediately. He relocates for threes. He's got Harden's little step back that people think is a travel, but it's not a travel because he's using a gather step. He's got that. He's a great passer like Nash and Mark Price. He pushes the pace like Magic Johnson. He's the Midwest Magic Johnson.
The Midwest Magic.
He's
Wow,
the Midwest Magic
that's,
Johnson.
that's almost over the top, but I want to use that nickname enough that I might just let it slide.
It's a great nickname, and it honestly might be true. Like he really is shaping up to me to be one of the best offensive players of his generation. What that means for this team moving forward, it's hard for me to say. It depends how they end up building out around him. But just think of that. Think of that, and think about where that could push you as a team moving forward if you have a guy like that.
I was thinking about this while driving the other day, just to contextualize what Tyrese Halliburton did in his third season. If he had a game where he scored exactly 20 points and had exactly 10 assists and went 4 of 10 from deep, right? It's a really good stat line, right? Wow. Must have been a great game. That was below average in all three of those stats for him last year. It's like, holy cow. Like when you just say 20, 10, and 40%, you're like, yeah, whatever. But then you say it like that and you're like, oh my God. Like he's so unique. And it's funny you said Mark Price, because that has always been kind of one of my comps for him, is just because Price was one of the first young shooter passer types back in the day. So I think that could be a similar career arc, although I think he's better comparatively.
He's taller. He's taller and longer than
the
him
height
too.
is a big part of that too, and his defensive instincts are better. Price was an awful defender, even in retrospect, so that's a big difference. So easy 10 for me. That was the easiest grade for me to give out. I did that one first. Bruce Brown, to quote Michael Malone, Brucey B. 2 years, 45 million bones, but the second year is a team option. So basketball wise, awesome fit. They need point of attack defenders on the perimeter so bad. I think that's the biggest thing he adds to the Pacers, even beyond some of the offensive stuff he does well. All of their off-ball guards, except for Andrew Nembhard, were struggling to defend last year. Aaron Nesmith guarded their other team's best players all the time because they needed him to do it. So great fit in that way. He also is fantastic in transition, which is where the Pacers play all the time. Second in league in transition frequency last year. He also figured out the whole corner three thing with the Nuggets last year and figured out how to play off of a star, Nikola Jokic, best passer in the league. And he also upped his volume from three at a credible percentage. Not a good percentage, a credible percentage. So he is a very good fit with Rick Carlisle because he's willing to get the threes up. He's a great fit with Tyrese Halliburton, and he covers the team's biggest weakness on defense, and they sacrificed absolutely zero future flexibility to get it done. And, Matt, I'll let you respond to this after I say it. In my opinion, Fred VanVleet is first. Bruce Brown is the second best free agent who changed teams this summer. So all those things considered, to get no future money out of it, although it could keep him if he's actually as good of a fit as I just described, to get the second best player who actually changed teams, I'll throw some other names who you could consider if you want, and to get a great fit like that, I gave it a 9. I think the only way it would be a 10 if it was no sticker shock on the number, but that's impossible when you get a team option on a 2-year deal on a guy like that. But yeah, great fit, great signing. If you want other contenders for second best player to change teams, Dylan Brooks, Dante DiVincenzo probably would be in that mix. But I think it's, for me, this is just because I've dove into his numbers like crazy for the last couple weeks, but I think it's Bruce Brown.
Yeah, I can't remember all the marquee guys who changed teams. I guess
Not in trades,
Max Strus.
Obviously, better guys get traded. Yeah, Strus is great.
Yeah,
as well.
I would say probably right now as I think about it, Bruce Brown. But yeah, so I talked about this. I was actually on the Fan, the radio station.
Yeah.
I was on there the other day. I talked about how one thing I really liked about this offseason was them doubling down on their biggest strength, and that's playing with pace. I think that's one of Bruce Brown's like best features is the first thing I wrote down this season about Bruce Brown in my notes when I was watching Nuggets play, I was like, this guy's so spunky. He's got so much spunk the way he plays. He's so confident when he's in the open floor. He's like the most confident dude on earth when he's on the open floor. So yeah, love that idea. Love how he doubles down on that. He's like a second Halliburton pace pusher type. I do like the point of attack defense. And I just want to say this on air, recorded live. Andrew Nembhard, incredible point of attack defender. I love him. I love his screen navigation. I love how economical he is with his movements. I love his length. But outside of that, yeah, it gets kind of worrisome. And you don't want Halliburton taking too many point of attack reps because, well, first of all, his greatest strength is his defensive playmaking. Second, you want to conserve his motor for the offense side of the ball. So Bruce Brown helps with that. Defensively, he's like a chameleon. He can guard up, he can guard down, he can play off the ball, he can play on the ball. The shooting has improved. All that money, not really too worried about it. Like you said, there's the team option. The one thing I want to just think about, I'm not really going to ding him too much for this because I do think they can replicate some of this stuff, but you have to understand the Denver Nuggets was like the perfect situation for Bruce Brown.
Absolutely.
And so like something like fans, I think, get lost in is like, unless you're a star player, your situation can change your effectiveness drastically. Like if you're in a really bad, like say you put Bruce Brown on the Chicago Bulls, okay, who have like no spacing, right? I watch a lot of Bulls. Spacing sucks, okay? If you put Bruce Brown on that team, he looks like a different guy than he does on the Denver Nuggets, who had great spacing. You can put him next to Jokic and Murray, and he could be like the worst shooter on the floor, and it's not a big deal. He can handle the ball, and they put the ball in his hands too, so nobody could really sag off him because he's got the ball in his hands. So I do want people to like pump the brakes just a little bit and be like Pacers fans when they're like appraising his value next season. Like I'm not 100% sure the guy we saw in the playoffs is the guy we're going to get next year for the Pacers, right?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was like, again, a perfect situation for him. But what I will say though is I did watch some Nuggets games, playoffs, regular season, where he was on the floor with Jeff Green, Christian Braun, Aaron Gordon, three guys who weren't really, good shooters. And that didn't seem to like he was still, Bruce Browning it up. So I don't think they need and I do think that they can replicate some of it with, again, they have an incredible stretch five at Miles Turner. So that'll help with spacing. I think they can replicate that. I mean, Halliburton's a great shooter. Hield, we haven't even talked about Buddy Hield yet. His shooting will space the floor for Brown. So I'm rambling a lot, but I'm just saying, like, pump the brakes on thinking you're going to get Denver Nuggets playoff Bruce Brown. But I also don't think it'll be that much of a change. I like the price. I like what he does for the team stylist. I'm going to go with a 9-2.
Well, guess what, Matt? If he's not playoff Denver Nuggets Bruce Brown, They can cut bait after 1 year.
Exactly. No, that's exactly the flexibility thing. That's another thing. If it wasn't for that, if this was a 2-year, like say it was a player option, like I might do an 8.
Oh, I would.
But
If it was a player option, I'd go like
yeah,
6, maybe. Like that's a big.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I think that a lot of the playoff part of it's fascinating too because he was better then than even the regular season. Which of course the Pacers could be like, yeah, we want playoff guys, but you haven't been there yet, so it's hard to say exactly what that fit will look like. So I think he's a great fit. I do agree with you that like he'll be less effective on offense unless Halliburton is like way better as a creator. Well, maybe even not even that. Jokic is just the perfect fit for it. Like an inside out spacing for him is going to be better than what Halliburton can provide. So 9, good. We're on the same page there. The contract itself, the structure is definitely a big part of my grade because I think we'll get to the future flexibility part of this, but that matters a lot. Obi Toppin. Look, here's what I have said on this trade, on this show for 2 weeks. Even if you think Obi Toppin is no good, terrible, no future in the league player, they gave up nothing for him. They gave up the worst of their 2 seconds in 2028 and the worst of their 2 seconds in 2029. Like the odds that pick is better than that both of those picks are better than 40 is so low. And they got a former top 10 pick who has like a lot of times when you say a former top 10 pick, it's because the player stinks. And that's just like the best way to sell them. But like Toppin has had good moments of like, especially against the Pacers, where it's like, oh, this guy's athleticism is crazy and it's clear how he can be a scorer and where he fits in the league. And so the price is amazing to me. To get him for that is incredible. And I think there's some element of the Knicks just being done with that, especially after that audio of him and Tibbs last year. And also, they would have been tiptoeing the tax line with their unlikely bonuses if they did the DiVincenzo contract and kept Obi Toppin. So they had motivation to actually deal him, even if it was for pennies on the dollar. Pacers benefited from that. He'll also fit better with the Pacers because there's no Mitchell Robinson and there's a better creator for him in Tyrese Halliburton. He'll fit well in transition. So even like I probably would say I'm lower on him than most Pacers fans are, but I think he's a decent player. And at that price and at this fit point, that's a great acquisition. Like it's so weird that I'm saying similar things for him and Bruce Brown, but for what they got him for, especially with only 1 year left on his deal, like I'm once again giving it a 9 because of the price and fit thing.
Yeah, don't they? We'll talk this a little. They get 2 seconds for Chris Duarte, right?
2 much better than they gave up seconds.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yes.
I mean, even if you like don't value seconds that much, you can say at least it's like you get it back for a guy you weren't using. You get a little bit more size. I know they were the problem last year is they didn't really have a 4 problem among other things. This was far from a great team last year, but the top of things. So I'll say this: Knicks young players usually do get like propped up a little bit more than they should because they play for the New York Knicks. So you got to factor that in. But okay, so what I said earlier with Bruce Brown and non-star players, like I'm just gonna put like arbitrary numbers here, but like if you're like a middling role player, you could if you're on the worst situation possible, you might look like the 200th best player in the NBA. But if you're put in a really good situation, an optimal situation, you might look like the 100th best player in the league. You know what I mean? And that's like it's a pretty solid difference. And I think that Toppin is on the opposite end of Brown, where it's like he's going from a situation that might not fit his strengths. You know, he's a high flyer, he's athletic, he can run in the open floor to one, that's kind of perfect for him, at least offensively. And then defensively, you can make the same case because he's, shadowed by a shot blocker, and it's always good to play. It's always good to play next to a shot blocker, though. I mean,
Yes.
is it like, you know what I mean? I know the Pacers still have their defensive problems, and that he's not going to be the one to fix it. But I mean, it's not like he's going to be, whenever he gets blown by, it's just nothing back there.
The best thing he offered the Pacers defensively at the 4 is that he is taller than 6'5".
Exactly. Yeah, that's pretty much it. He's taller, longer than Aaron Nesmith.
Yes.
But yeah, so I like the offensive fit. He's still young. He is very athletic. I could see like a world where he just looks like a lot better than he was last year because he's in a better system. But also, the New York bias towards I'm going to tax them a little bit for that. They didn't really give up much. I'll do a 9.
Let's go. We're in lockstep again. That one was the price made that one easier for me. Like when I was talking to the Locked On Knicks guys about this, they're like, yeah, maybe like pick 32 or pick 29. It's like, nah, how about way less? just a lot less than that for the former 8th overall pick. Who again, it's not like this is like okay, this is an extreme example, but it's not like this is like Anthony Bennett, where it's like, yeah, he went one, but he was like legitimately a bad NBA player like his whole career. Like Obi Toppin has been good at times. They tried him in the rotation to start last year. Okay,
He played
so
playoff
probably
minutes.
he did play playoff minutes. I think part of that leaked audio thing with him and Tibbs was not playing in a playoff game against Heat. This is the worst grade I'm going to give, Matt, and that is something you just alluded to: trading Chris Duarte to the Kings. They get the Dallas Mavericks 2028 second rounder. We talked about the Suns second rounder earlier. How about the other team that could have a great second round pick in 5 years, the Dallas Mavericks? And they get the Kings 2030 second. Kings have some stability now. It's impossible to predict 7 years out. The Mavs pick could be awful too, but either way. So this one is interesting. So first, let's talk about something that we haven't done with for any other pick or any other move they made, and that is the process that led you here, right? If you did good process the whole way and it didn't work out, versus if you did terrible process and it does work out, how do you grade that in retrospect? Because the Duarte pick was good and he was good his first year, and then he was rough his second year. So they're trading him at his lowest value he's ever had, right? And if he had a good third year, I would assume his value would go up a little bit, even though he does turn 27 next June. So this is certainly the lowest value he's ever had. And I said on this show, I thought I would, even though they have this logjam at the 2-3, I would not have traded him for less than even if it was protected, like a late first, just because his contract could be valuable to them. And I believe a ton in his shooting. He was traded for 2 seconds instead. So that's lower value than I would have done it for. Now, the reasoning makes a lot of sense, even though the reasoning and the issue that was created for the reasoning was something the Pacers did themselves, and that's that they have way too many 2s and 3s, right? They have Bruce Brown, they have Ben Mathurin, they have Aaron Nesmith, they have Ben Shepherd, they have Andrew Nembhard potentially. I'm missing somebody in this mix. But either way, they
Aaron
have a lot
Nesmith,
of,
even though he's
yeah,
now
I
with a
don't know who I
4.
just missed. Mathurin, Brown, Hield, Nesmith, Shepherd, Nembhard. And if Nembhard plays backup 1, then TJ McConnell's not playing. So there's no, like, someone already right now is not playing. If Duarte was on the team, he is also maybe the guy who is not playing. And so, yeah, you can go, okay, it makes sense to trade it. I've said this. If he has less value to your team than a different team, you should get assets that make more sense to your team. Like, that makes a trade make sense. And I think it does make sense. And I think the seconds could be good. And there's a chance Duarte's last year is actually predictive, and he might just not be the guy he was as a rookie. But he also could be the guy he was as a rookie. And they've acquired Nesmith, Mathurin, Brown, and Nembhard all within the last 14 months. Buddy Hield is the guy they acquired the longest ago at Duarte's position. And even that was February 2022, right? So they've acquired all these 2-3s along the way, and they were opportunistic, smart moves. But the logjam that they're clearing up, they also created. So that is also part of this evaluation to me. I kind of want to give this a 5 or a 6. I don't think the value is great. I think he'll be much better with the Kings in their structured offense. I think his shot will turn a little bit. I get why they did it. The reasoning makes sense. Their team will make more sense. Their assets will make more sense going forward. Perhaps this Dallas pick could be used in some grand trade later, and then this grade would go up. But right now, I think we can give this a 5.5.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I scouted Duarte his rookie year, came away relatively impressed by
He
him.
was great.
Yeah, I thought he had a good year. I think he had a good year. He has some ball skills, a shooter. He's not a sieve on defense. He's got some size, some length for the position. He's got good footwork. All this and that. I understand that when the Pacers drafted him, they were on kind of like a different trajectory. I mean, they were still like, what is it, Brogdon, Sabonis, and
LeVert.
Turner, LeVert, exactly that
Just
core
hired Rick
core.
Carlisle. They wanted to win with that team.
Exactly.
Now. Yes, correct.
The irony, Sabonis is actually going to get to play with Duarte again.
Yes.
But so maybe it's like them just like, we're in this new direction. The vibes are at all-time high. Let's get this last little remnant of kind of what we were doing before out. I understand that part. I do understand the logjam, and honestly, like, I'm higher on Nembhard than I am Duarte. Higher. I don't know much about Shepherd yet. I like Hield more than I like Duarte. So I mean, it makes sense you want to play these guys. It's basically, okay, if you really think about it, it's basically like they traded Toppin for Duarte. If you really
you could think that way. Yes.
And so,
I
like,
think they would say that the seconds they got for Chris are
I was,
better than the
yeah,
ones they sent away,
yeah,
but yes, that's fine. Yeah.
top and
Yep.
plus some stuff for Duarte. And I mean, I think that makes sense. Like, if you think about it, they had that log jam, the 2-3, and they needed just a bigger body and one who could play with pace. I think that Toppin's probably a better transition asset than Duarte, even though I do recall Duarte having some nice little pull up threes in semi transition and transition. But yeah, I'm kind of with you where this is like, I don't know, maybe it's also them like admitting that they did the wrong thing with that pick once upon a time. Maybe should have gone a different direction with it. I'm trying to think who was on the board at that time.
How about the guy I ranked 6th that year, Moses Moody?
Okay, Moses Moody. There we go. Uh, who else? Moses Moody. Was there? I mean, Disumu.
I'd have
He
to
was a
look
little
at it. I
later.
can't remember.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'll go 7. But you gave it a 6.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
I'll go
gave it a
7.
five
I
and a
think.
half.
Oh, okay. I'll go 7. I think I'm a little bit higher on it than that.
I still believe so much in his shooting that I
Mm,
think if he ends up at 38% this year, which is totally reasonable, it's only 1% better than his rookie season, then you go, well, they traded away a decent 3-and-D wing for 2 seconds. But we'll see where that actually shakes out. Perhaps I'm totally wrong there. And part of it, too, for me is like you're solving a problem that you also created. So
yeah.
how much credit is and you should solve the problem if it exists. It's just you also are the reason the problem exists. So that
How
is
how
every
about
move of major consequence made by the Pacers this year, unless you want to talk about like renouncing free agent rights. I do not want to do that. So I have one more tiny thing. This one's out of 5, just what's out of 75. And that is this, man. I don't even know if you know this. So let me read you something. Here are the only 5 players who currently have a guaranteed contract for the Pacers next year. Now it's going to be more than this, but just hear me out. Miles Turner, Jarris Walker, Tyrese Halliburton, Ben Shepherd, Andrew Nemhard. That's it. That is it. Just those 5 guys. Now, Ben Matherin's team option, 100% going to get picked up. Like he in theory has a guaranteed contract next year. Jalen Smith has a player option that is technically guaranteed money, although he could theoretically opt out. So either way, if you include both of those guys, they could still have like a bonkers amount of flexibility next summer again. And I think that that is intentional because that is when Halliburton's money kicks in and you're running on less time to actually build your team up within the cap environment. I think they made good opportunistic moves that maintain that future flexibility, and that's really hard to do. They're big on flexibility and optionality. And if they're any good this year, and Halliburton looks like an attractive guy to play with, and he has gone on the record saying he tried to help recruit Bruce Brown and DeAndre Ayton and all these guys they've gone after. Having that flexibility is valuable. That is an extremely important part of the offseason to me, and I give that a 5 out of 5 because having space, like even if you're just taking in guys from other teams on dumps to get other assets, is still valuable. And so being a decent to good team this coming year and then having that much space is going to mean a lot to them, even if cap space is kind of overrated as a thing by fans. So that is a perfect 5 to me to round out my list of transactions where I give the Pacers out of 75 a 62, which is pretty dang good in the context of a lot of other teams' NBA summers.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, especially because we don't know. I think that teams are kind of doing the exact opposite of what they did. They're doing the same thing, but in the opposite direction of what they did the last time. Something crazy happened when we had the new TV deal. What was that, the summer 20
Yep.
16, when like all these crazy contracts were being handed out. The NBA is kind of doing the same thing now, but in the opposite sense, where it's like teams are like they might be overreacting to like these new like tax restrictions, second apron and whatnot. Like I think the Warriors let go of Poole a little bit too early.
Look, even Poole, like you compared to Halliburton
Yeah,
earlier, even with Poole's bad year, I was stunned they dumped him right
exactly.
away. Like
Yeah,
right
no,
away.
so it's just the over. So like, and like a couple teams have been doing that kind of overreacting by my eye. So like the fact that the Pacers are going to have sexy infrastructure, led by Halliburton's little Showtime machine they have going on. Um, and they might have like enough like open for because that's like the new cool way to win now is like you have your 2 guys, your 2 all-star, all NBA guys, then you have a bunch of versatility, depth, little chess pieces that you can pick at for different rounds. And they're shaping up to have one of the two stars and then all the chess piece guys. If it's, there's Jerice Walker now, Buddy Hield, Nembhard, this super versatile Swiss Army guy who I just can't stop talking about. You got Turner. I don't if they did accept Brown's team option, how much space they would have then?
I can calculate it very quickly, but I need two hands. So I gotta put the old mic on the stand. I'm sure that'll be fun for everybody here. All right. Assuming that they keep Bruce Brown and Turner and Mathurin and then Walker, Halliburton, Shepard, Nembhard. I'll even include Smith just for funsies. That is $111 million in salaries with a salary cap of $149 million.
So you could still have an all-star. You could still have an all-star.
Still have Bruce Brown.
Exactly. So yeah, no, I really like it. I know we'll probably look back at this in a couple of years. The Pacers right now, the fan base is probably this is always every franchise. This like part when you're here is like the most your fan base is going to like you because you have like all this potential. You just kind of surprised everybody. You're coming off this
no
year.
Expectations.
Exactly. Now, like this season, there's going to be some expectations. I think I'm sure people will expect a playoff appearance, and maybe they'll exceed those expectations. Maybe they won't. Who knows? If I had the exact answer, I'd put some money on it. But what am I even saying? But yeah, they're in a good spot. That's all I'm saying. Enough rambling for me. They're in a good spot. What did I end up giving them? I gave them a 5 out of 5 here. So what's my final score?
Below my 62, your fun final score is 61.5. So clearly we are Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharp with our disagreements.
You're going to get me fired next.
Wait, they're not even together anymore, are they?
Yeah. I think he pulled a Stephen A. He took a page out of his book and got him backdoored.
Who's on Uninterrupted now?
I don't know.
That's good. That's the right answer. I don't know is the right answer.
Have you seen this is like my new favorite Twitter video. It's like hilarious. Have you seen Kwame Brown like going at Shannon Sharp?
I have.
On
He's
Twitter.
done it multiple times, right? Like several times.
Well, the one video of him in his car.
Oh no, I don't think I've seen that.
I'll send it to you after.
He's tweeted at him I thought he's tweeted at him like 100 times.
He might have, but this one was
like
the
car video.
Very hilarious. Yeah.
Those shows do well, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, what are they doing? But it's like
not as good as your show.
Well, regardless of that, it's like I just never have met someone who's like, oh yes, I love Uninterrupted. I don't know. I've yet to figure out who it's for in my life sphere. Clearly, people are watching it because it's doing very well and is on TV. In my personal bubble of the world, it has not reached it yet. Matt, this is way longer than I meant to hold you. I'm sorry for that, but thank you very much for the time. I alluded to this earlier that you cover the league for a trillion places. Please tell everyone where you cover the league for, where they can follow you, etc.
Easiest thing for you guys to do is follow me on Twitter at Mat Issa 15. That's at MATISSA 15. I post all my work there, tweet some of my musings on life. Sometimes I'll talk about a movie or something because I like movies. But yeah, it was very, very fun to be on here. Big fan of the Locked On Pacers. I'm glad I could spend the afternoon with you, Tony.
You're becoming quite the indie media star with your radio appearance and Locked On Pacers appearance. Highly recommend following Matt. And if you can, dive back into was it 2019 or 2020 when you did the Quest for
Quest for the Best 2020? But for Pacers fans, you guys should check out. I did a big thing on Reggie Miller last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Blazing the Trail. You guys check that out for the Pacers fans.
Very good. Yeah, the quest was Matt's literal quest to find the best players in the NBA, and it was very good. And during COVID also was extremely something we all needed. Tomorrow, man, what day is today? I almost just said the wrong thing. Tomorrow, I believe we'll do part 1 of a mailbag. It's that part of the summer. I don't know what fans want to hear about heading into the rest of the offseason. We'll make it a 2-parter. And then next week, we're going to do some fun stuff looking at where the Pacers stand in the East, what their rotation could look like now. Look ahead at FIBA play for Halliburton and Tice and some other former Pacers who aren't on the team anymore that I thought I'd be talking about with FIBA play. So lots of fun stuff coming. Thank you all a ton for listening. Have a fantastic day. See you soon.